Welcome to Flair for Flows. My name is Aliona and you're watching a talk show where we discuss everything but relationships. Every romantic relationship begins on a very high note of excitement and with many hopes for the future. But when the relationship has met its end, how can you end it well? Because going through the separation or divorce can be extremely difficult, no matter what is the reason for it. It can literally turn your whole world upside down and make it complicated to go even through the daily routine, stay active and productive. But there are the ways that can help you to go through this difficult adjustment. And I'm extremely excited to introduce my today's guest expert, Zee Gilmore, certified conscious uncoupling and calling in the one coach. Zee, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's such a delight to be here.
Absolutely. So please, can you tell to me and to the audience a little bit more about what do you do?
Yes, of course. I came to this work because of my own divorce, and I recognized that there was so much unnecessary pain that I went through and that many of my friends have been through as well. And I found this work. It's work by Catherine Woodward Thomas, Conscious Uncoupling, and it's really about helping people realize, what am I doing that I could do differently that would save me from so much of this pain? Absolutely, so that was how the journey began. It's been very profound, very healing, and I love now sharing it with other people.
Beautiful. Can't wait for this because to be honest, going through the variety of emotions right now because I'm extremely excited about our conversation, but on the other hand, it's a sad topic, to be honest. Nobody's starting the relationship with the thoughts how I'm gonna end it, you know? So that's why it's really important but sad at the same time.
Of course.
Yes, and to be honest, the researches and data and numbers doesn't help in this case because all of them are screaming out loud and saying that going through the breakup or separation is equivalent to having the physical pain or even like you're going through the drugs withdrawal. So to begin with, obviously my first question, why breakups hurt so badly?
Well, that's a great question to start with because it helps us really set the scene.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to start by acknowledging that breakups are a massive deal. They are such a slap in the face to our self-esteem. They can leave us with a really wounded sense of identity, and we can doubt ourselves, and we can doubt our chances for love in the future as well. And if that wasn't bad enough, to add insult to injury, the people closest to us play a massive role in regulating us. They regulate our moods, they regulate our blood pressure, they even regulate our hormones. So when our relationships are on the rocks, so are we. We can be all over the place. And that's why, as you said, it can be likened to drug withdrawal. Because when we lose what regulates us, it pitches us into the most vulnerable state of not knowing, just at the very moment when we so crave certainty and security.
Absolutely, and like there are so many hopes and so many dreams and so many plans, and suddenly it's all broken up.
Yes, and you have to let go of that. And that is super hard. And that's why we feel so unlike ourselves. And if we don't contain our emotions, that's what enables us to show up in ways that are inconsistent with the person that we know ourselves to be. Have you had friends, or perhaps you've done this yourself, if you've broken up with someone and you just feel like, I don't recognize myself anymore, or I don't recognize him, or I don't recognize her?
Yes, it's very interesting because people you see them completely different way. That's absolutely true. And to be honest, I was always questioning why, because it seems like you was dating one person in the very beginning, but you end up with completely different person at all. Like how and when they changed and why they're showing this side of themselves. Like it's, yes, you're questioning a lot, yourself and the partner as well.
And can I trust myself? I thought I knew you, and yet look
Yes.
who you are. Who are you? What's going on here? So the most important thing we can do is, well, first of all, to any listener who's busy thinking, you know, I'm in that desperate state, and I feel I'm going a little bit insane. Most probably you're not at all. This is so normal when you're feeling that awful inside to feel so overwhelmed and feel so derailed. So just know that you're in a very big boat of lots of people who feel that way. It's wildly uncomfortable. And so the best thing we can do to begin with is reach out and find somebody who can teach us how to hold and contain our emotions so that we have a better chance of managing our emotions rather than allowing our emotions to dictate how we show up, because that might be a little bit loopy.
I know, but still, like, what's happening when, okay, like you see these points of no return and you understand that you're just diving into this emotional turbulence.
Yes.
How to deal with it? Where to start? Like, how to do it?
So that's another great question. So when you know that you've hit the end of the road, obviously your sense of stability is going to be really threatened.
Yeah.
And this is very likely to trigger our most basic survival instincts, which vary from person to person. I'm sure you've heard of fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, when you feel under threat, Aliona, which one of these three is most strong in terms of your own response?
And can you repeat the three ones?
So when you're feeling threatened,
fight,
flight, or freeze, do you just stay still?
Flight. I think I just run. Yeah. I don't go through that emotions. I run from them like completely. Yeah.
And that is so understandable. And again, there are so many people who do exactly what you do.
Yeah.
But of course, when we retreat, what we're not doing is we're not facing what we need to face in order to evolve and grow. What I do, I tend to freeze, which again is not helpful. And it means that I'm paralyzed and I can't think straight. And that means I'm really not going to be in the right space to be able to take the action I need to take to help me and my ex-partner heal. And of course, the other one is fight. But when we come out swinging, it can be good because there's an energy to it, which if we funnel it in the right direction, that could be helpful. But if we just come out fighting, you know, in a sea of red or not being able to understand what we're doing with that, that's when we're likely to do even more damage to even more people.
Well, I think all these three ways that you described, it's the way to self-protect. So it's, of course, you're going through this emotional turmoil and everything in you is screaming to self-protect. That's what you do. So and is it possible even to think or to act in a healthy and rational way in this situation? If there is a chance for it.
There is. But of course, so you're right, it is all about self-protecting. But of course, what's not healthy about that is we're not addressing the root cause of what broke our relationship down in the first place. So the best thing we can possibly do is think, what do I need to learn from this so that I can grow? But of course, you're right, because when you're in the throes of all those emotions, how can you be rational? How can you think, this is time for me to grow? And so I suppose the first thing we need to do here is just remember I need to hold and contain my emotions, because when you're operating from that very triggered survival self, how are you going to generate your life? What sort of things are you going to do? Versus if you're standing in a calmer state where you can understand things better and where you will bring a wiser take on things. What's going to be the difference in your actions, do you think?
Well, of course, we need to, the wider will be the second one that you just described, absolutely. But I think how our mind plays in this way, that your emotions are negative that first are coming.
Yeah.
So your whole life ruins. I mean, and especially when you was caught off guard and you didn't expect the break is
Yeah.
coming, or when your partner was your whole world and or your best friend,
Yeah.
and you know family and friends were involved. So
Yeah.
like how our minds cannot switch into positive in this way, like everything negative comes out first.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why it is so important to be able to first just hold and contain your emotions. Just keep yourself sane and rational. And to the best of our ability, what we need to do as well is just recognize what is at stake here. Because the thing about emotions, and you're so right, because we cycle in and out of such pain, and then hope, and then denial, and emotions are not stable here.
Yes.
So if we can just educate ourselves and recognize this emotional cycling is normal, I need to hold and contain myself so that I can make better, wiser choices. And let me be crystal clear about what is at stake here. Because if you break your heart, it's a bit like if you break your arm, yeah?
Yes.
If you don't set it straight, it's going to heal a little bit twisted, right?
Exactly, yes.
And so if we try to heal our heart without setting it straight, then it will heal a little bit more defensive, a little less trusting, and you will be, instead of able to be free to love with your whole heart, you will be looking for, what do I have to look out for? Where do I need to potentially control this situation? Instead of just looking for the good and being able to step into the possibility of that. What it boils down to is your next relationship does not start when you meet that wonderful person. It starts with how you finish this relationship. Do you complete on it? But you're so right about when you're in the throes of those very difficult emotions, what can I do?
Exactly, because even you're questioning yourself, your identity in this world, because you was in a way identify yourself with that person, and
Yeah.
you don't know who you are
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
and what do you want, what you gonna do next, like will you ever find someone else in your life, like the same love or better, like will you have any future, or you will end up alone?
Yeah.
So and as well your heart is broken, so if there is any set of the rules or like these pathways you need to take in order to heal your heart and not to repeat these unhealthy patterns,
Yeah.
and as you rightly said, to end up in the most healthy way that will allow you to start the next relationship like fully open to it, fully clean to it.
Yeah.
There is a like set of the rules.
Well, I mean, I don't know about rules, but there
Yeah.
are certainly steps we can
Okay.
take that will help us. So again, it all starts with holding and containing your emotions. There are certain ways you can do that. I mean, right now, if you're feeling emotional, what might you do just to calm yourself down?
Okay, I think that will be few ways.
Yes.
In some situation, I will feel that I need to stay alone to cool myself down.
Yes.
In some way, I need to do some activity.
Yes.
So that will also, I need to be with a group of people. Most probably, it will be the sports activity.
Yes.
Or go and party.
Yes, exactly. And people have different ways of doing things, and whatever works for you will work for you. And so it might be yoga, it might be meditation, it might be partying, it might be exercise, it might be going for a walk in nature, it might be eating healthily. It's about, or it might be chocolate. I mean, I'm a great one for turning
Yeah.
to the chocolate cupboard when I need it, but I know that this isn't a sustainable thing. So starting off just by being kind and gentle to yourself, and surrounding yourself with good people who will not just be accomplices and kind of feed the demon, as it were. Mm-hmm. You need people who are going to help you open your eyes and become more conscious of what was it that I was doing, probably without even knowing, that contributed to the breakdown of this relationship. This is when we need to learn, because if we don't feel forward traction,
Yeah.
then we just feel lost. So I've had various clients who've seen various different therapists and coaches, and a comment that I've had on taking people through the steps is, I just feel I'm moving forward. Whereas sometimes I just have the same conversation for an hour and it doesn't get me anywhere. I think being able to chart our progress is really important here.
And make like slow steps, not expect that within one step it's going to be happening.
Yes, sadly there's no magic wand that we can wave, but it is a very set process that we can go through. Holding and containing emotions, step number 1. Step number 2, recognizing this is so painful. How can I use it as fuel for change? And a great way of doing that is to set an intention. What do you want? Yep.
But I think that's a great question because it will be difficult to answer what do I want
well,
in this situation. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it's difficult for you to answer because it suggests you're not nursing a broken heart. But when you are shattered and you're on the floor and you can barely pick yourself up, you kind of know what you want. You know, you want a degree of safety, you want a degree of happiness, maybe a degree of mutuality. So the sorts of intentions that I've heard, and I've heard so many beautiful ones, but you might have one that is, I want to be my happiest, healthiest self, so that no matter what happens, I will be happy, I'll be loving, and I'll be living in my integrity.
I think that's the greatest decision ever.
Well, so that works. Yeah, that works for that person. But somebody else, if you're, like I said, if you are bent double with pain, you might decide, this is it. I have had enough. This is the very last time I ever feel like that. And I am going to say no to cheaters, takers, narcissists, gamblers,
anyone
alcoholics,
who makes us happy, yes.
Yeah, freeloaders, whoever it is, I'm saying no. And I am capable, and I am bright, and I'm going to learn what it takes to have great relationships, and I'm committing to that right now, today.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing these thoughts. And sadly, in the majority of cases, all the breakups are going quite ugly. You know, with the stories which I keep hearing, boyfriend and girlfriends break up, and the guy is asking, "Return me my gifts." You know, when with the divorce, when you're trying to split all the assets and literally maybe splitting and cutting the TV into 2 pieces.
Yes.
So, is it possible? Like, what's about forgiveness in these moments? Like, should be more kind and not to blame the other party and let the forgiveness to take place in?
Well, I love that you brought up the whole idea of blame, because what often happens, especially if we've been betrayed or abused, is that we need to make sense of it. And so we tell ourselves a story, and often we are the victim of that story. But the trouble is, we have no access to power when we position ourselves as the victim. And that's why we need to look for something that can be quite hard at this point, especially if we're feeling heartbroken. We need to look for, what role did you play in the breakdown of this relationship? And that might be that you ignored the red flags because you wanted to believe in the fairy tale. But I've got a friend who, even before she married her husband, she didn't like the way he treated some people. But because he was love bombing her, she just felt, I can't have this end. And yet now it makes her skin crawl. And the love has gone, and so she ignored those red flags, which led to this. My own problem was I veered away from disagreements because I didn't want to rock the boat. Because I'd been taught as a child, be polite, don't rock the boat.
Yes, keep this balance, the arguments. I believe I have the similarity with you in that I don't love arguments. I don't like. And some points I would rather like skip it and try to keep it aside, the problem, rather than bring it up, because I don't want to argue.
Yeah.
Really, like that's, for me, that's such a stressful situation. So,
and different families have different cultural identities around that. But to go back to your question about forgiveness, when we can see that we ourselves played a part in it, and we know that, yes, he or she might have done terrible things to us, how did I allow it? You know, how did I not speak up? How did I not stand up for myself? And yes, I didn't push you into his arms or her arms, but I wasn't making this as happy and healthy as it could have been. And so forgiveness, we need to forgive ourselves.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. It's like, first, should we start to forgive ourselves
Definitely.
before the partner?
Yes, we need to make sure that in looking at the role we played, we need to steer clear of shame, because we did only what we knew how to do. We did our best. And this is why it's a time to learn, so that we can set our hearts in the right direction, forgive ourselves, and the more we can forgive our partner, you can feel it in the field between you, and they will feel it, and then it will help them come out of survival mode as they realize, oh, maybe you're not the enemy, or not the enemy anymore. And I think it was Brené Brown who said, when you forgive, the person who benefits first is you.
Is yourself,
yes. So it does play a huge role.
That's true. I couldn't agree more on that. Since in your practice, like seeing and helping the couples, like, do you figure out what are the common, in a way, misconceptions about the breakups and divorces or separations that you would like to debunk, and also maybe the pathways people take after the breakup, which you can say that it's a wrong pathway, they should go to another way, it's not helpful at all?
Okay, so well, let's think about what do we need to debunk first. And I would really say that the biggest myth is that it's any one person's fault. It takes two to tango. You know, when you're in a relationship, you've got one person, you've got another person, they're coming with all their baggage and their ideas, and so is this person. And then you have the interaction between you. And are you showing up, trusting each other? Are you leaning into your differences, or, like I said, veering away from conflict? Do you know what it is to commit? And are you being the person that you need to be to make it work? So again, when we point fingers, we're not being fair. And it's far better and healthier for us. And this is what sparks our real growth and helps us evolve beyond the person we've been in that unhappy relationship, by understanding how we're undermining what we do. But in terms of what do people do that's not helpful, so if you turn to the internet and you tap in how to recover from a broken heart, you will find all sorts of articles.
Yes, I think for females, the standard one will be to close yourself in the apartment, buy a lot of ice cream, sit on the bed, cry, watch romantic movies, cry more for a couple of weeks. Then you start to get life again. For guys, I think the opposite. For the next couple of weeks, they are like partying like crazy. They feel fantastic. They cry after. So I think that's the most common stereotype that's happening. But yes, if you can add more.
Well, I think stereotyping doesn't necessarily help you, because when you're in it, you feel so alone, and so it's so personal, isn't it? But I think the worst thing we can do is think that we can solve this with our behavior only. What we need to do is we need to look at what is our underlying consciousness. You know, what are our deepest beliefs that, what beliefs do we hold about the possibility we hold for love? So many people think deep down, and they might not even be aware of this, they might think, I'm not enough. Other people want more, and life is going to be hard. Other people will think I'm too much. You know, other people are exhausted by me, and life is never going to be smooth. I personally felt this real sense of I am alone, and other people aren't there for me when I really need them, and life is cold and unfriendly. And you might feel one of any number of things like that. It could be I'm not wanted, I'm invisible, I don't belong, or I'm just not safe. And the thing is, when that is where we're centered, when that is what we really believe, we actually show up in ways that create more evidence for believing that. So for me, feeling alone, it meant that I never really put both feet and my whole self into my marriage. I thought I was doing the best, well, I was doing the best I could, but I was so unconscious of how I was showing up. And so the best thing we can do is find somebody who can help us become more conscious of who are we in relationships, how are we undermining what is good, and what can we do to feed it
And
more?
is it should be always the therapist, or can be the friends, or the new person in life?
Well, so it needs to be someone who knows what they're doing. Some friends can. Some friends are really good like that. You know, they don't just tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear.
The truth.
Yeah.
Yes.
But of course, finding a coach who knows what he or she is doing, I would definitely recommend the book Conscious Uncoupling by Catherine Woodward Thomas. It deals with exactly this. And the coaching I do is based on the book. But there are a variety of other really good people who can help you. But you need to find someone who's not just going to care about you deeply. They also need to stretch you, and they need to hold you accountable for showing up differently. Because we have to show up as the person we want to be.
Yes.
The person who would have that fantastic relationship.
So we should completely reset ourselves in a way.
Yeah, and just consciousness. I mean, that's what it is. You know, what am I doing? Is this feeding my relationship, or is this actually undermining it in some ways?
I see.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And but in some way, is it even possible to understand and figure out that, okay, we come into the time that we need to separate. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you, in your mind, you come to that decision, not by anyone's like fault, mistake, cheating or lies or something. Because even recently, it was just a few days ago when I was preparing for the episode, and I think that's because the AI listening to us, you know, my Instagram feed was giving me one of the videos. I think it was like Russian bloggers couple,
Yeah.
and they were doing the video of saying, of explanation why they are divorcing. So I
Yeah.
believe earlier they just announced, and they wanted to give the information to their viewers of why they are divorcing. And they were saying that we just had a conversation. There was nothing major happening, no fights, no conflict. We just sat one evening, we started to have a conversation, and we figured out that one party is unhappy in something, another party is unhappy. So it's a time to stop the relationship, to divorce. Even though we have kids, we're gonna be good parents, but for us, there is no love, there is no future. We separated. And I don't know how much we can trust that story, because by the end of the day, it's a social media. So asking you as an expert, is it possible to understand that there is a time to separate?
I would say that, yes, you can say there is a time to separate, but that time doesn't just happen. Everything we do in the run-up to that moment contributes to that moment. So what has happened to get you there? Because you can arrest it beforehand if you're conscious,
Yeah.
you know, or if you dare speak up and say, hey, I'm not feeling too great. But you need to speak up in the right way. And the best way is to be really self-responsible and to say, look, I miss us. You know, we used to be so good together. And now I feel that somehow we've drifted, and I so want to get us back because it's so important to me. And I don't know how to do it. And I'm scared. And I'm used to being able to pick up the phone when there's a problem and having it sorted within 5 minutes. But right now, I feel that it's beyond me. And even speaking to you is terrifying. But I'm telling you this because it matters, and you matter, and we matter. But a lot of people don't dare have those conversations beforehand, or don't know how to. We were never told. I was not told by my parents, and I certainly wasn't told at school. It was all about crowd control and discipline, and you know.
Exactly.
So
There's no such subject, unfortunately.
no, we need to learn how to have relationships. And so sometimes you can think a relationship is ended, but then just by having
The proper conversation.
a proper conversation, but also getting in help from people who really know what it takes to have great relationships. I had to learn. You know, it was my own pain that set me on the path of learning. And I'm so grateful to that now, because it's opened up my future in such exciting ways. So is there a time? There could well be, but it means that, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, do you want to just say, draw a line in the sand? Or do you want to feel we have done everything we could? Because what that would involve would be to have those very vulnerable conversations and to lean into the discomfort and the differences. And it would mean sharing your needs. And some people were brought up almost not even to have needs. You know, needs are an annoyance in our families or in our schools or in our communities. But actually everybody, it's healthy for us to have needs and for us to be able to, if I communicate mine to you as a friend, let alone to my partner, I need to know that he is going to listen to my needs and say, okay, Zee, I understand this is important to you. Let me see how I can fit this in, because what's important to you is important to me. So being able to communicate your needs and being able to hear theirs as well is super important.
Yeah, it's more complicated rather than just say, okay, like you're unhappy, let's break up.
Yeah.
You know how it's happening in the majority
Oh,
of
there's
situations.
a lot underneath that.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful definition, actually, of intimacy. Pia Melody says that true intimacy is when I can show up as me and allow you to show up as you, and neither one of us tries to change the other. Exactly. But what that means is you need to speak your truth, and you need to be yourself, and you need to communicate everything that is important about you and to you. And that's, I think, where we struggle, because
we want that the other partner just somehow understand what we need. We don't want to say it. like by my face expression, understand it, why not?
Yeah, and everybody's different. So love is like a discipline. It's putting in effort every day and making an effort and celebrating the good times and being there for each other.
Yes.
That's the real thing. You know, when you turn to look at somebody and you either ask them the question directly or it's there in your every movement and you're asking, are you there for me? The response you get back is, absolutely, I am. But for them to be there for you, you need to show yourself.
Exactly, yes. Don't afraid of doing that, yes. But anyway, still the breakup is there. So if there is like a chance or if there is a need to try to go back to your ex-partner, or it's better not to do that because what's broken, it can never be like new.
It can't be like new, but it can potentially be better and healthier. So I've had some clients who they have split up, they've got back together with renewed understanding of how I showed up that was detrimental to the relationship, how you showed up, what your needs were that I was dismissing, what my needs are that I didn't even recognize.
Oh, wow.
And if you can now communicate in a healthy way, then there is the possibility, because you know you came together for a reason. Maybe you had a lot of similarities, maybe you really had some great things in common. So you know, we don't just kind of want to dismiss the possibility, but we need obviously to keep it healthy.
Oh wow, how interesting, because my personal opinion is the opposite. Like I believe that because yes, even when the glass is broken, you can put it together back, right? But you will still see that scratch. Like it's still, you can drink still water from it, but there is this still scratch on it that, in my opinion, maybe my experience, that it doesn't work. Like it's always reminding that there was that breakage there, and it's not gonna be like in the beginning.
Well, in some cultures, when something breaks, they glue it together with gold. And so when it gets put back together again, it's even more beautiful than it was before. And so I'm not saying for every relationship, go back, try it, rehash it. But what I am saying is if both parties are willing to give it a go, but not just give it a go, it is to recognize what were we doing that didn't work, and are we both prepared to show up in healthier ways that could give this relationship another chance.
I see. So then my another question, why did you allow to come to the point of, in some way, no return when you cross the line and break up? Why then you didn't work on it before making the decision of breaking up?
Well, very often people work on it when it's already too late, in one respect. But then if you realize, and very often people have these massive revelations during coaching. Oh my goodness, I had no idea I was being so dismissive. I had no idea this is actually really important or really healthy. And then if they are willing to see themselves as a co-creator of the dis-ease in the relationship, that can help them show up differently. And when there's love, I mean, love can conquer a lot. So it's not always appropriate, but it is always appropriate to take a good look at yourself, to reflect on yourself, and just to learn and grow and evolve beyond the person who was there creating unhealthy dynamics. And you could start off by seeing if you can create healthy dynamics with your last partner, or you might just think it's time to move on. But I would say you can't categorically say yes or no.
Okay, I see. So it's very individual, depends on the couple and the situation.
Yes.
What's overall, like, can the breakup be amicable, or the drama is inevitable in every separation, you know?
Sometimes it can be surprisingly amicable, but this is when I think there's a great deal of consciousness and respect for the other person. So this is when our survival instincts do not take over. This is when we really learn to hold and contain our emotions and be very self-responsible. So, I mean, there are some beautiful stories out there of people who separated in the most loving way, who had ceremonies for themselves and their friends and family. And of course, if there were children, it was pledging to become the best possible co-parents that they could be. So it is entirely possible to separate amicably. And you're right, I know where the question comes from. For most people who feel these great turbulent emotions, and there's a lot of confusion and a lot of overwhelm, that is the norm, sadly.
Yes, I see. Like, because for me, even it's not drama, but then to run into, after some time, to run into your ex-partner, it can be just very uncomfortable in a way, you know what I mean? Like, it's not even, you're not angry anymore, you are not upset anymore, but just, and that's my personal experience, it's just very uncomfortable, you know? And you want to avoid that. So I had literally a situation where we were going to the same gym, and we said, like, after some time, like, there's no emotion, no nothing, but like to bump into each other while exercising, like, you feel so weird. And then I stopped going there, and I learned after that he was feeling the same, and he stopped
going there as well.
Yes. So, like, is it a way to feel okay? Is it normal to not to want to see your ex-partner in your life never again?
So everybody responds differently, and I think the more conscious we become, the more we can see that ex-partner as a really important part of our life journey, and one that we can be thankful for, even if things were not at all amicable. You know, we can see them as, Catherine describes it, Catherine Woodward Thomas, as our dark guru who taught us some really important, really valuable life lessons. And sometimes, especially because very often one person has a bit of a yearning and the other one doesn't. So when there's that lopsided element to the relationship, then it can stir up all sorts of feelings again. So, I mean, yes, it's very normal to feel all sorts of things, but the more conscious we can be, the more we can just be grateful that they were in our lives. We might not want to see them, but we can still be grateful.
Yes, that's so true.
People talk about the difference, you know, the opposite of love. Some people say it's hate. I heard one example that I really liked, which was, you know, it's indifference, which is quite a useful thing in some ways, but I think that's a pity as well, because that's not giving them enough credit for the lessons and the love and the fun times that you did have. And then there's another interpretation of the opposite of love as being idealization, which I think is really useful, because idealization does not help us. If we think, oh, he's perfect, she's perfect, and then we have to show up in a certain way to be appropriate for them.
Appropriate fit for it.
Yeah, and nobody is ideal. We're all messy and human, and you know, if we bump into them in the gym, they're going to be feeling something because they were such a part of our lives, and you're going to be feeling something, and perhaps that's okay.
I see. How interesting you said about hate. Just also recently I've heard a very, I think, interesting interpretation of the word hate, which was stating that for me hate is not having any sort of the relationship unnecessary. So the only conditions, if there is any financial obligation involved with that person, then I can cooperate. But if there is nothing, like I can say it's about the workplace. So imagine that at the workplace you are with your ex, how you deal in this situation. So you don't want to hate, you have to deal with them, but you don't want to see them.
Yeah, well, you definitely don't want to hate them, because hate is a very strong bond. You know, love is a strong bond, but hate is also a strong bond, and you're not free of them if you're hating. You know, we need to move past that. And actually, one way, perhaps, of helping us move past is to recognize that when we were together, we had some agreements. You know, when you're married, it's very obvious, because you actually make some vows to each other. But when even if you don't get married, you have expectations of the other person. You might state them explicitly, or you might just feel them inside. Maybe it's, I'm going to help you be the best version of you. Or maybe it's, I'm going to rely on you for my financial advice, or whatever it is. But when you make those agreements, sometimes when you split up, you actually need to cut the cords in a very conscious way and recognize, okay, what were the agreements that I had with this person? And if you're still feeling bonded to them in a negative way, is that because you still, maybe even unconsciously, have this connection, this expectation, this agreement that hasn't yet been chopped? And so maybe you need to just sort of sit down and reflect and think, you know, you said that you would provide while I looked after the children. Well, I'm now providing and looking after the children, and I'm resenting you for it. And then if that is the case, and if that's how you've divorced or whatever, you need to think, right, what am I going to do about this? Because this old agreement isn't working. So there needs to be a sort of, well, an internal, I release you from that agreement, and I will create a healthier alternative agreement now that actually works for our relationship going forward.
I see. No, that's amazing. Great, everything what you said. I wish we had more time to, to discuss further, but
we can talk for days.
Exactly,
yes.
But you really gave such a great advice for the audience.
Thank you.
And, the last one, you find the main advice, that how to end the relationship in most healthy and maybe happy way.
Okay, so it touches, I suppose, on everything that we've been talking about.
Absolutely.
So the first thing we would do is learn how to hold and contain our emotions. The next thing would be use this relationship pain as fuel for change. So set your intention, know what it is that you want. And then the third point, this is the tricky bit for many people, recognize what's the part that I played in creating this dysfunction in the first place. And really own it, as we said, without shame. And then next, it's about identifying what are my core beliefs about what is and is not possible for me in terms of love and loving relationships. And then finally, it's about make a stand for what you want. So think about your intention. Use that as your guiding star. And think to yourself, if I'm going to have this kind of amazing relationship, if I'm going to be this happy, healthy, loving version of myself that operates from my integrity, who would I need to be? And be that person today. Even before you feel capable, even before you feel strong enough, be that person, because your energy will shift. And once you change yourself inside, everything around you will shift and align itself with this beautiful energy. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, beautifully said. Thank you so much. And just allow yourself once again to love and be loved. Have a great day.